Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it's the Mattriarchy. You know, I actually downloaded the theme video. I had Evie edited it down to a smaller, more theme opening kind of way, and I was going to start with that, and with everything, I totally forgot about it.
That's okay. You can still do it. We'll just pop us in the back room. It'll be just as professional as we always do.
We'll just pretend. Because actually, I can share a video file. It's on the desktop. Oh, here it is. Let's try this out.
This was just the pre-show. It's okay.
Yeah.
How Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music. Short and sweet. All right.
Short and sweet.
Boomer music.
Boom. Yeah. I went off on a show talking about how everything's born from other things, and I was using like the Beatles as an example, where they really were just carrying on the rockabilly sound that Buddy Holly and the Crickets did, and just kind of take it to the next level.
Music's like that.
Music is exactly like that, and I think storytelling and art and technology and everything is like that.
I've been going under a funny rabbit hole with like the goth music genres, and it's been funny to see how there are like so many different subgenres as a result of that. So it's like, it's music's interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Not today's theme, but cool. So, guys, I can't remember who came up with this idea, right? The idea was, we cover a lot of artists, we cover a lot of history of comics, but we're talking about doing genre studies, right? About talking about how comic books have all these different genre pieces, and that factor into the story content and factor into the paradigms in comics. And so I thought I'd bring some people on and we'd talk about an example of a genre from the past, or an example from the past of a genre in comics, and then talk about how that kind of storytelling affects comics as a whole. Yeah, it's a really, really big brain idea that I had, or whoever had it. I don't even remember. So we're always looking for stuff that's pretty much free to read, because I ain't got a lot of cash. So we decided we're gonna take a look at the ArcToons platform. Chuck Dixon has found
and he's gone.
And we are not letting our audience down. So welcome to the Mattriarchy, where every week Rhys forgets to charge his computer, or his computer explodes. Or we need to start like a betting pool as to what's going to take down Matt's computer. So who's got I've got my money on unexpected Windows 10 update. Do I have any takers for left charger in the other room?
Okay, hold up. I might I'll be back because I've got to restart my computer apparently to get this camera program going.
Oh, hey, that's cool.
So okay, so all right, so we were taking bets. Was it an unexpected Windows 10 update, or that was too short? I'm thinking that was a charger left in the other room.
No, it wasn't even that. My whole like the browser window just like blunk, and it's like, we're having a trouble connecting to StreamYard, and I'm like, I was just on StreamYard.
That's a new one. That's a new one. We'll add that. We'll have to add that to the bingo card.
It's like you're already on StreamYard, but they're having trouble.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it was a sunspot or a hurricane. So, Forrester, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. Good to be here.
I was just introing the idea, the concept of the genre review. Did I send you the link to the comic we were going to talk about?
I don't think so.
Curses.
That's okay. I'll post. We can post a link in chat. You can read it and as we talk.
We definitely want to put a link in the chat so that people can. I mean, because honestly, it's pretty short. It's just like I think 4 pages of the 8-page comic story.
It's like a golden age.
All right,
Yeah, yeah.
if anyone wants to read along with us, you can take a look at chat. We might even do a little bit of a read through, perhaps, of a couple
Yeah, who knows?
panels.
I better bring it up.
Yeah. So that's the story. It's in the chat. Oh, Larry Bernard says the trouble with StreamYards is the StreamYards is the platform. Well, thank you.
It's better than OBS.
Well, for a while I was using
Oh, there it is.
I can't remember the name of it now. Oh, hey, everybody's sharing in the link in the chat. But yeah, so I was using a different thing for a while. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so Western comics. How do we want to do this? We should have come up with a plan ahead of time. My goodness sakes. Other than just a general kind of a thing. We want to talk about the history of Western comics, how they kind of became a dealio, with their impact on them, when they were popular. We want to our experience with Western comics. What do you want to go with that?
These all sound like excellent things for us to do next week. So, who wants to tackle the history of Western comics and why they were popular? Do I have any takers?
Phil and I have had conversations, so I know we both know some stuff about
all right.
So that might be something that we can go ahead.
Well, you guys are carrying the show then, because I know very little.
So, of course, Phil, tell us what are your impressions of the genre of Western comics? Let's go with that.
On why they were popular in the 50s, or
just
in general?
Well, why they were popular in the 50s.
Well, I mean, it'd probably be because, we had just gotten through a major war, and we're still in the transition from the cowboy days to what we are now. Because the 50s, everybody's getting their first car, basically. And they got all that money fighting war, they come back and they buy a car. And they're driving all over the country and stuff, so it was like a transitional period or whatever. Oh, he's gone.
Do we lose him again?
That's what I would say, though. Did I BS myself good enough?
I give that a B+. All right. So again, I'm going to go with intermittent internet problem for the computer issue today. Larry Bernard, and while we're waiting for Rhys to reconnect, let's engage with our chat a little bit. We got is it Chozo, like the Chozos, saying Cowboy comics were popular in the 50s and Western comics were banned by the Comics Code due to gun use. Is that true? I'm not sure.
A big thing to keep in mind too is they're cheap to make. Movies like that, science fiction, you can tell the difference. They're cheesy in the 1950s, but a Western, you could pull off a Western pretty easily.
Man, everybody's dropping life flash today. So
the Comics Code never banned Westerns. They were printed all throughout.
Right. Okay. And it had more to do with the nature of the violence in them. Right. So one of the things we're going to look at today, the comic is a Jesse James comic. Right. But Jesse James, while an outlaw, has to, in every comic, has to be the hero. You can't just
they didn't like bad guys because that was a big thing in the Comics Code. They didn't like criminals, which was crime does not pay, but the bad guy always arbitrarily loses in the end. They didn't like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I would imagine the Westerns maybe took a hit after the Comics Code because of some of the types of story, kind of like with crime comics, which I do know was how the Comics Code, severely striking a blow against horror and crime comics in particular, largely saved from what I've read the superhero industry, because they were starting to kind of tire out a bit, but then
well, part of the thing is the superhero genre had already lost a ton of steam way before that, right? And that had to do with the fact that the market was getting split because there were different types of comics that were coming out then. So that you started spreading the genre a little, because everything was superheroes, because Superman was such a big deal. So everybody tried to match up to that superhero thingamy. But then, people, grew up maybe a little bit or try to stretch what they were trying a little bit. And so you had the horror and the science fiction and the romance and the cowboy comics that all kind of were ended up displacing or replacing superheroes, even in the 40s, in the late 40s. And so you had this huge swell in Western comics that were happening at the same time as a swell in like crime comics. But the thing is crime comics were already on the decline before the code. They weren't there, and that's one of the things that they were, and the market as a whole was on the decline before the code
because of TV.
Yeah, TV
That makes sense.
is a big factor, and also 1952, the last quarter in 1952, Marvel tried this stunt where they put out more titles than anyone had ever put out before. And so if you look at the distribution model, there's this huge spike in the fourth quarter of 1952, and then a steep drop, within a quarter.
No, Marvel has never flooded the shelves before. That is no, you are pulling my leg. That's never happened.
I can pull out the graph if you want.
They don't do that today with their films either. So before we jump into it further, I'd love to just recognize some of the chat we got going on.
Yeah.
Larry's trolling us a little bit by saying we should get out of the way the time that Marvel decided to make a Brokeback Mountain cowboy comic.
Yes,
which was making apparently that was a new thing they did with Rawhide Kid and
Thanks, Bill Jamis. We were talking about that last week.
someone apparently listened to Ram Ranch. So yeah.
Oh man.
And then
if you're gonna I gotta go off on this just for a second. If you're gonna decide to retcon a cowboy character into a gay cowboy character, why would you pick the Rawhide Kid?
I think they just heard the name and kind of chuckled.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going with.
It's like no, it's about we're big inclusion. No, you're not. You're using gay people as a punchline. That's not cool.
I had actually met. Thank you, Larry, again for that. I'd memory hold that. I think I saw a blip on Bounding into Comics, and my brain had just blocked it out. So I get to relive that memory.
I was trying to break into Marvel at the time, and that was going on, and I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me here. It's like this is getting printed, and they won't give me my. We had a dynamite pitch for a Captain America miniseries that
dynamite. Oh,
anyway,
get it because in the West they use dynamite.
Yeah. I get you.
Okay.
It was a stretch, but I got it.
Okay.
So, but anyway,
I thought it was because Dynamite Company has so many westerns, like the
it's
Lone
both.
Ranger.
It's dual. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I did. It was just
look at that
3D. I'm doing a 3D chess here.
So I think John had to totally restart his computer at this point. It looks like.
I think he's trying to install a way to get the VTuber avatar on his camera.
Yeah. Oh well,
so.
That's fine. We'll see if it happens. But anyway,
all right. So westerns,
Western comics. Back to Western comics. So they were, and here's one of the crazy things. And Phil has done a bunch of reading about Frederick Wortham and his motivations and his background and about how Seduction of the Innocent was about way more than comics. Included all sorts of advertising stuff. But something that is not known is that how mad Wortham, and this is I hold the opinion firmly that Wortham was a convenient patsy for the comic book industry to have shenanigans, because he was totally fired up after the code because he thought Western comics were just as violent as crime comics. And so he was really lathered to try to get people if you're going to do a thing, you can't go half measures. What about everybody's going to think that it's okay to shoot shoot people if they're cowboys?
His biggest thing was he didn't want censorship either.
Yeah,
he just didn't want kids to be able to buy violent comic books.
Did the Comics Code give Westerns any exceptions? Because I know the film Hays Code had a prohibition against revenge in modern times, which was interpreted to mean revenge in a Western was kosher, but film noir, it didn't, they had to work around it somehow.
It didn't have the comic code didn't have it wasn't that involved. And also a lot of the stuff that the comics code forbade was stuff on the covers, not stuff in the books. And like you couldn't use the word zombies. And so like there are all sorts of comics throughout the 50s about ghouls.
Do you know anything about the urban legend that in the 70s Marv Wolfman's name couldn't be printed until the code went away or something? I've heard that, but I don't know if that's true.
Wolfman.
I heard something about it, but I think they had to write in an exception like to the code. Like actually, I think Marvel editorial, my understanding, and I might be wrong about this, was that Marvel editorial had to write a letter to the code folks to specify that this is Marv's name. He is not a wolf man. Because at that point they loosened up because like Werewolf by Night was a feature that was going on in the horror books. I mean, in like DC, Marvel, and Charlton all had horror books by first quarter of 55 when the code went into effect in the third quarter of 54. So like
Fizz brings up an interesting point though. There were, I think, aspects maybe of I don't know all the nuances, but I do know that there were I think there were parts of that might have been more strict because part of what one of the reasons why Stanley bucked it initially is he wanted to do a story about like against drug use. So he was actually, he was not pro drugs, but just the fact that drugs were going to be, that's right. Yeah. But like just the fact that drugs were going to be featured at all, it was like, no. And Stan's like, well, screw this. I've got a message to tell. And so they bucked it there. So there's definitely some weirdness to that.
Yeah. That was that. And like, and then there were some other things because like, we had Our Man comics got reprinted and, those were using hypervitamins and stuff.
Well, the people that wrote the comic code, it was Dell and DC because they were the two biggest.
Mm-hmm.
And the government basically told them, like, you guys need to like check yourself. And so, if you're the biggest companies, you're like, okay, well, we're going to do this.
And on the Fizz's thing on the code, not just that, but also by using the term mystery instead of horror. So the House of Mystery, Journey into Mystery, Strange Tales. And you go back to Amazing Fantasy, the Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. Every other story in that book is a horror story. Except Spider-Man. And so that was they got around it every 6 ways from Sunday. It was entirely meant to take a few, probably two companies out of the works, and they were both already struggling. So
Eagle 43 puts I think those are eyes.
Yes.
Which is very clever considering that was some of what Wortham used in his testimony, specifically targeting the eye fixation in the crime and horror comics.
Taylor points out Stan was actually asked to do that story by the same people who told him he couldn't do it. Well,
they weren't exactly the same.
Not exactly the same people.
Yeah,
and it was also
the comics code wasn't part of the government. They were like just entity that was part of the comics industry.
Yeah, and even the government parts that were involved in the comics code were, it was in the foundation of it. Like those guys weren't in office anymore in 72. Well, not most of them. Strom Thurmond was still, but.
Well, one thing I've always heard attributed to the code that I never really bought was the idea that the code killed EC Comics, which when Mad became a magazine and went mainstream, they would have been making more money off of Mad than their entire horror line. I always figured I figured it was financial, not code related.
And when EC Comics went under, there was like 40 other imprints that went under that same year. So it wasn't like, what I think personally is Dell and DC was like, oh, we can kill the market and then be the top of the industry.
Well, and Dell never signed on to the code officially because they thought they had all of the Hollywood contracts, And they, in fact, I've got a Dell comic I picked up that actually specifically mentions we are not signing on to this because we're better than all of them. We don't need their code and it was really a distribution like game because like Dell had their own distribution network.
Yeah, because most of the comic industry was connected to American News Distribution or whatever the company is called.
Yeah, or Fawcett.
They were like a huge mafia company, and they got taken down, and that killed a lot of publishing. But like you said, Dell had their own distribution, and I think DC Comics had to scramble and set up their own distribution company.
Yeah,
Marvel had to sign on with DC.
Yeah, and that's why.
What was Gold Key?
Gold Key was
Solar Man of the Atom.
Yeah. I think they were Western Publishing Company is the name of the company that owned them. But I can't remember.
They had TV contracts too. They had Irving Allen, and all of his shows except Lost in Space got adaptations, and that's because Gold Key already had a comic called Space Family Robinson, and there was some like lawsuit drama there.
Gold Key was also what Jim Shooter pulled. He got some licenses from them to start the Valiant universe. So I think he got Magnus Robot Fighter from them too.
Yeah, that was Gold Key. Yep.
Yeah.
What was the one with the dinosaur? That was
Turok.
Turok
was originally Dell, I think, though.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Well, I think they had licensed it to Dell. I think somebody like the creators had licensed to Dell and then ended up taking it with them.
I wasn't sure if Dell and Gold Key were separate companies or not, because I swear I've seen covers that say Dell Gold Key.
I think Gold Key was a subsidy of
Dell.
Maybe.
Sounds right to me, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I am not 100% sure about that. The funny thing too, to go off Fizz's point, because I'm talking about this a lot about Fawcett. Fawcett got out of the comic game in 1952 when they lost their lawsuit with DC. It cost them so much that they entirely cut out of comics altogether. And when that happened, they also took their comic distribution wing and shuttered it. And they launched the direct paperback novel business, and that the Red Badge novel, which also took a lot of the when crime comics went away, the people that were buying crime comics were buying crime novels from Fawcett. So Fawcett got out of the game and still made them all of the money. So.
Crime and Western comics also overlapped because, like,
yes.
crime does not pay, which its focus was on true crime. A lot of their stories were Westerns and other historical periods because, true crimes exaggerated. They weren't really that true, but.
So apparently, Western and Dell created a partnership. So that's why you're probably seeing crossover between them.
So did since you're looking it up, did Dell distribute Western's books in that time period?
Dell would finance and distribute Western material.
Okay, because the other thing about it is Dell kept the Golden Age size for quite a while longer from their printing, and I know Western comics were regular Silver Age size. I know from bagging.
Are you saying Western as a company name or the genre?
The company. Yeah, this is gonna get confusing.
It is, because like when we were saying Western comics, that sounds like you're talking about all comics as opposed to manga.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. Western Publications, which had Gold Key and what was their aftermarket? Because they had second run stuff under second printing.
We have three meanings, right? Because we have Western and Eastern in terms of geographic locations. We have Western as a genre, and then Western Publications, the company. So keep up, chat, as we interchangeably use Western in three different contexts.
Okay, let's back up. So, let's go ahead. We've talked a little bit about the history of ridiculous things, lots of things. Let's go ahead and take. Actually, here's a. Dave brings Ashanovich brings a great point. Westerns and horror overlapped in weird Western tales, which is true.
With
Good
skeletons.
stuff.
Why isn't Dave on this panel? I think he knows a lot more about Westerns than I do.
Well, I was thinking about asking him, but we'd already filled up I had the 4 committed extra spaces.
Gotcha.
And then weather happened. So we were supposed to have Cody from Jack Irons coming on because dude loves Western comics. He writes them.
Yeah, I see it
I was
on Twitter all the time.
super excited to have him on, and he lives in the Old West for crying out loud. But I guess half the town blew over in the wind today, and so he wasn't sure he was going to have electricity tonight. And then, Captain Cummings calls me and tells me that that Kansas is underwater. I'm like, well, that hasn't happened in a million years.
Yeah, like it started blowing and the wind was going and the rain was going, and then I looked and my trash was like blowing down the street, and I was like, oh, it's gone.
Started going and the wind was blowing. Sounds like a Western ballad.
Okay, I'm back. I think it worked.
It looks like it worked.
Awesome.
So you've missed all of the conversation about the history of Western comics, I
I'll
think.
bet I did.
Although
Well,
we might get into it more later. Who knows? So,
okay, I'll be listening closely then.
So Twitless, do you happen to have the comic brought up, or should I bring it up?
I got it. Give me a second.
Okay. Sweet.
I can't read along on an Android phone. Every time I try to, it bumps me out of the chat. So I'm flying blind here. You could tell me anything is in the comic, and I'd have to believe you.
Aliens.
Jesse James.
Yeah. Fizz says
Well,
he wants to make...
there were occasionally sci-fi westerns back then. So,
Oh yeah.
like the Silver Age Ghost Rider, it was an asteroid that gave him like glowing powers.
That's true.
Fizz says he wants to make a weird Western movie, and Dave says, through rain and wind and weather, hell bent for leather.
Yeah, I meant to share Dave's comment because I thought it sounded badass, and instead I clicked on Taylor's.
Cows.
Cows, everybody.
Cow.
Round them up.
Alrighty, so
well, now this is this comic, and we put it in the chat earlier. This is on ArcTunes. It's free. And my understanding is that these comics are curated, not put up here but curated by Chuck Dixon. And I don't know the process on all of that, and there are some typos, so I don't know how all that happened. I don't know if they had a robot that couldn't read English or what. But we're gonna go and check it out. I don't know if we'll check the whole thing out, but I thought it was really fun. So let's talk about it.
yeah, definitely. This is an interesting project that Chuck Dixon does, where he's been introducing these adventure comics, and this time they're doing a Western. So there's a brief little snippet. This is meant to be read kind of on a cell phone format or through a kind of a webtoons or esque format. So you can read it. So they've taken these traditional comics and they've kind of chopped them up so they can put them in a vertical format. I think that's kind of cool as a way to experience the content. However, there's a trade-off, right? Because you are experiencing a comic that was meant to be seen as a single page, and you're getting like just panel by panel, kind of chopped up a bit. So it's not. There's some pros and cons, but some of these comics, like, they're out of print, and so getting access to them would be otherwise impossible. And so for a modern audience to kind of access works they would not have been able to access before, I do think that is interesting.
And there is an online museum that you can go and look at Golden Age comic books.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thought too for future months installments.
That's a good point. I guess the other thing is that for some of them, though, accessibility is a bit clunky. One thing that's good about this format is you can just scroll through it and kind of get the comic pretty easily. I know that when I've navigated some of those archive sites, because some of them were made, in previous iterations of the internet, you click on it. Right. You click on one page and then you have to click on the next page and load every page individually, and it makes reading so flipping tedious. Because I've read some Winsor McKay, and Winsor McKay is a great read, but like having to click on every single image separately is just a pain.
The one I use though? You can download the whole book, and then like you don't have it. Still is kind of garbage, but you don't have to load every page individually. Okay.
Yeah, it depends. I think it depends on the archive site that you're using. But okay, so let's take a look at this. So this is the intro that Chuck's got, and this is kind of a nice little bit where this is something you wouldn't get anywhere else, where he's introing the comic in question. Ironverse says, "Yo, my web came on, though I've had a few fully." I've now had a few fully expecting my town to not get it together. Am I having a stroke?
No, I think
No,
I think you gotta-
it's not very well.
I think there
written.
was a wayward thumb on the predictive text.
Oh, okay,
Like-
okay. All right. For just a second, I was like, I'm dying.
Poor Ironverse. He has to deal with us roasting him over here.
Oh, sorry.
So, or maybe there's a missing period.
Well, again,
I'm not
Iron,
sure.
if you want to hop on, I think we still have space on the panel.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, there definitely is. There definitely is space up here. Oh, grammar is not the strong suit.
Okay.
Editors, that's what we're here for.
Actually, we're going to get into some typos that I think may have crept up into this particular piece in a minute. But Chuck Dixon starts up by kind of curating the piece, and so I do like that because this is something you would only get through this ArcToons presentation.
It makes me
Mrs.
wish that he would curate like all my comics.
Well,
If
you
anybody
only
read like Chuck Dixon writes like reviews for movies on his Facebook all the time, and they're like fantastic to read.
Oh yeah, definitely. And especially like you can all. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about Chuck is like if it's a crappy movie that's still fun, he'll be just like, this was an amazing crappy movie, you should go watch it. So it's like it's a good review without the pretension, and that's not something I can pull off because I breathe pretension.
Where does he post these? Is these on a personal website or on Webtoon?
It's on ArcToons.
Yeah, it's ArcToons.
Yeah.
It's Archaven Comics.
Got it.
All right, so he starts off by like I said, curating it a little bit, which is neat. But it's just a little blurb, which is kind of cool because they don't belabor the point. But obviously, one of the important bits here would be Joe Kubert, who founded the Joe Kubert School, right?
Yep.
Correct about that? Okay. My artist on Omega Girl, I think, went to the Kubert School. So definitely there's a link there, yeah.
I've got some pals, I guess we'd say, down in Colorado who are Kubert School graduates as well. Yeah.
So before we actually, I want to scroll back up here. First off, they don't make comic covers like this anymore, and there is something quite beautiful about this.
It's a nice painted. It's a very nice painted look. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you follow me on Twitter, Dave Ashanovich, who is of course in the chat, and man, I tell you what, he shared Cowboy comic covers like for 2 days. Yeah.
I saw that. I couldn't keep up, but those were great. A lot of them were
I
TV,
saw
some of
that.
them were
TV
painted
tie-ins
covers,
too.
some of them were photo covers, but and I don't know if they were his personal collection or if he was just like, just going up, but it was, I feel like, man, we're about to let this guy down.
All right, you got to highlight Iron versus comment. So, spoken like a true cowboy, I'm just a drifter and a wanderer who rarely knows what he is doing, but does it anywho.
I can relate.
Yeah.
With a six
Everybody
gun
makes
on
that
my
point.
hip.
Yeah.
A big
And then,
iron on his
also
hip.
Dave
Yeah.
Dave points out that Chuck Dixon wrote a man called Frank, Punisher in the Old West, which we did not read tonight. So that's not, but it sounds like something I should read. I haven't, but I really want to now. So anyway.
All right, so let's jump into the opening for this book. So again, a very nice opening panel here. One thing you'll notice is that they've to make this fit the format, they've had to redo the lettering. It might be hard to see it on this particular screen, but if you do go to Archaven, you can notice that the print quality on the sound effects and the lettering, like the caption boxes and the text boxes, is entirely different, because when you take a comic like this and put it into a vertical format, you tend to have to re-letter it. So that leads to some interesting consequences, including some typos, I think.
Yeah. And once again, we're not sure if a person re-lettered them or if it was some sort of like machine. Like
This is digital. It's a font. It's Wild Words.
Well, yeah, definitely. But I'm just not sure if it was if a computer did the reading and the relettering.
Right, because like there's
like
that way where
AI
you,
thing.
yeah, where you use like a PDF program to like read the page and then yank the text from it, as opposed to just transcribing it word for word by hand.
Yeah.
And so that may be what's behind a couple of the typos, perhaps. We're not,
But-
or yes, we don't know.
The
But,
title here, Great Prison Break, looks like he did that by hand. Like,
The Great Prison Break.
I mean, looks like he used a font, but it looks like he used. I don't know. I can't tell because I'm looking at it on your screen. Is that from the original comic? Looks like he used Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah, that's probably what's going on.
Yeah.
He's probably using Illustrator for that.
Yeah, I think he did it himself then, and the word balloons and all. I think he.
Hey!
Well, it looks like we lost the captain, but Cody's here.
We got the Wanderer.
I'm here. I made it.
Hey, what's
Oh,
up, Cody?
that?
The
Yo,
captain's
yo.
gone, but
How's it going? How's it going?
Hey,
Hello.
good to have you.
Happy to be here.
All
I'm
right.
glad my wiring got back up.
Well,
The gang's all here.
glad you're staying safe.
The gang's all
Yeah, I lucked out. But anywho, I didn't get to check this out earlier. I wanted to. From what I gave it kind of a glance, right? It looks like he took panels out of a previous printing, right, and then
Mhm.
repositioned them for a web format, which I haven't seen before.
Don't feel too bad because I didn't get all the way through to the end of the whole thing either. So
Well, I don't think any of us have because we only have the first two parts.
Oh, there you go.
That should
Yeah.
work pretty well with Golden Age comics, though, because they were drawn in a format to look like they had been in a newspaper, even if they hadn't. So the square boxes were seldom they seldom went outside the square grid because there was like this prejudice that comics that were in a newspaper were real, but newsstand comic books were lesser. So you made it look like it was reprinting a Sunday strip.
Which is also what made like a Jack Kirby or Will Eisner stuff so remarkable, because they both were doing stuff with a full page that wouldn't have been
Well,
newsprint worthy.
that-
Well,
means-
Eisner got a little bit of an exception because the Spirit was put in newspapers, but
Yeah.
as a
As the
as its
insert,
own-
the spirit.
yeah,
the spirit
exactly.
section. Yeah.
Yeah, you work within the system you're given, and you work to grow it. And that's what the best artists tend to do.
So I'm trying to remember. I think this first page might have actually been a full page panel. I need to double check.
Probably would have been because they liked those big opening splash pages that were
Right. Yeah. So at
in
least for-
media res. It
Yeah,
would
it-
start usually with the climax of the story, not with the actual beginning.
Right. Something to hook you in.
Yeah, that was standard until like the 1980s, maybe even early 90s.
Yeah, and,
I mean,
and it was used at different times in different books too, but that was like the way every story was done for a long time in Western comics.
Superheroes too, right? Green Lantern, Silver Age volumes, every story
Oh, yeah,
starts
yeah,
with the
yeah.
climax.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And horror stories would sometimes start with a scene that you thought was going to be the climax, and so as you're reading through, you're reading like House of Mystery, and it starts off with something that like looks really creepy, and then you get to the actual thingamy, and it's not what you see. So it's a twist on what you were expecting. So
All right. So I've
Sure.
got the original page in its original form pulled up, so you guys can kind
Hey.
of take a look at kind of what
Oh,
that looks
nice.
like. So you kind of have the pretty big splash panel dominating most of the page, but then it kind of drops down to the typical square strip kind of a look there.
cool.
Yeah, I noticed right away on that page, especially that first big opening panel, that if you notice, the noose seems to be ringed in blood as if it's been used before. I thought that was kind of nifty. Like it's a little bit to do with the coloring, a little bit of the red bleed in there, but seems to be an extra little bit of foreshadowing, right?
I hadn't
I
picked up on that.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
Um, But I will say that now that we can compare the two, the Great Prison Break was not. Whoever has done this lettering has done a very good job of recreating at least the original fonts. Because if you take a look at this, and then I'll pull back the other image, it's basically the same. So we pull back the the new one. I wish we could get some other scans so we could compare both. But here we go. So yeah, he's pretty much. No, it's definitely a recreation because when you look at the print quality of it, it's not the same with the sound effects or the text boxes. That being said, he's pretty much recreated the exact same font. So that's definitely a pretty cool thing there.
Well, now Forrester's gone.
Yeah, no, this is just
Everybody keeps like disappearing.
another
It was
one.
interesting to see the original you showed a second ago, though, because when I looked at it on my phone, I pictured these as like 3 or 4 pages, but like 6 panels per page. And so it was interesting to see that it wasn't all just like, tiny panels.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting in its own. It's all big panels.
Alrighty, so
it starts with the hanging, and then all of a sudden we flash down to the scene yesterday or whatever it was, right?
Yep.
So Jesse
It
James.
was early morning in 1877.
And so,
well, don't stop, keep going.
yeah.
Jesse thundered into Lead Town. I don't know.
We timed this right, boys. Taylor's
that word,
unlocking
you
the
gotta
door,
use
and
it.
there's nobody else around.
This thing is going to start turning into a comic reading instead of a review.
We can do both.
We can do both.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
We can read just a couple panels. It's good. Gives a taste to the audience. All right, who's gonna be the old banker?
I'll do that. Don't shoot.
All right. You won't get hurt if you keep quiet and do as I say. It isn't your fault that Eastern corporations buy up land out here for farming without paying their owners what they're worth. Honest farmers like Hank Moreland and Ed Desmond suffer on account of those syndicates. They send gangs of men around to ruin their crops, then refuse to extend time on their mortgages. The syndicates bank their money here. That's why I'm taking it, because they owe Moreland and Desmond plenty. You understand?
Oh, I understand. All right. Yes, sir.
Somebody's got an echo.
Yeah.
So this sounds like current political discourse.
I know.
The corporations.
Well,
Nothing new under the sun. You know?
Jeez Louise. I feel like I had this debate last week.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So who was the narrator? I forget.
That was me. Okay. In a thundering tattoo of gun, I can't even think. I've already lost consistency with this. In a thundering tattoo of gunshots, Jesse James and his brother Frank and 2 younger boys with some of the Clements blazed out of town.
Wait, now he's Scottish.
The narrator was always Scottish. Pay attention.
I don't want to have both Scottish now.
I'll go with it.
Okay. All right, we need new voices for whoever are these people. Cody, you're up next.
Yahoo! Come out and you won't get hurt. Woohoo! There you go.
Sheriff. Okay. I'm laughing so much I can't even think. Sheriff Tolan stared at the dust, and a hard, cruel light came into his eyes.
All right, Phil or Forrester, you're up to be the evil sheriff.
Moreland and Desmond, be said, reckon, won't be too long before I get me 2 robbery convictions.
You mentioned their names, but they weren't in on the job, Sheriff.
Slap! Shut up. I run this town the way I see fit. I tell you, Moreland and Desmond were in that robbery, and if you know what's good for you, you'll say they were too.
Oh, violence against the elderly.
I tell you, I had read this beforehand, and I was still shocked. The character I was
Love
voicing
his
got hit in the
Yosemite
face.
Sam mustache.
It was open hand, so it's legal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as opposed to a fist,
You know,
Alrighty.
old codger lives matter. I'm just gonna.
Old culture lives, man.
All right, so let's see what chat has to say. Fizz says he's going to come back, or may come back. Neostar is in the chat. Good to see you. And
we're supposed to be like reviewing this comic, but now it's turned into like a read just out of nowhere because they made a joke.
That's
Oh
fine.
no, I love doing comic readings.
No,
We'll do this
sorry,
somewhat.
sorry. I was explaining it to my wife because she just walked into the room. So.
Oh, tell Jazz hello.
Okay, I'll do that now.
Here we go. Neo's into the mood.
Assassin Frash environment. All right,
Yeah.
so, but it's good. It's good. Even if you're going to do a review, it's good to give your audience a taste of what you're going to review and talk about. So, if you want to read the rest of it, take a look at Chuck Dixon Presents.
I mean, hey, it's fun to make voices on this all.
I think so.
There's something very satisfying too about doing Western voices and cowboy voices. I don't know what it is, but
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you just
My
put on your
part's the evil judge.
Yeah. For me, I grew up on the edge, the outskirts of the frontier. So like this is sort of just like coming home to my family. But
so what part of the homecoming is slapping the old people?
well, we're not bad guys. We don't do the slapping. Anyway, but yeah, so the story goes on from here. Basically, this sheriff. Whoa, what was that?
I think Forrester's mic, I think, is blowing up on us.
I don't know. Anyway, so the
is.
sheriff's got a mat on for these farmers, and so he goes and hauls them in, and they're being brought before the hanging judge. They're brought before the hanging judge, and that's where Jesse James is like, "We pulled this robbery, and the people we were trying to help, they're gonna be executed." So he's got to go and do a jailbreak. So. And Mrs. H says the curse of the sea has Forrester's mic.
It's always the sea,
Yeah,
it's where Cthulhu, resides. It took his mic.
So, but yeah, that's the way we didn't mean to scare you off, man.
Oh no, I have to take care of something.
Yeah,
I think we lost Forrester again. We have a rotating amount of guests today. So.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was talking about. So anyway, yeah. So the story goes on from there, and so in order to serve justice, Jesse James has got to bust these guys out of jail, and that, unfortunately, the whole story isn't up yet. Just like the first half of the story, so we don't know what happens. But I really enjoyed this comic as a whole. I think it's a really good example of how we were talking before about how the crime genre and Western genre blended together. They had a lot of the similar elements. But Cowboy Comics stayed popular longer than crime comics for lots of reasons.
So one thing I wanted to point out is, in particular in this book, is that it's not just a classic kind of adventure story. It's also a story that has a bit of cleverness and ingenuity to it. Because as Jesse James starts to kind of plan this jailbreak, he doesn't just like barge in guns blazing. He's using his brain. He sneaks in with some prisoners that are part of his gang. He stumbles into a guard. He uses some soap or wax, I think. Yeah, he uses some wax to make an imprint of a key. So it's the jailbreak here is got some it's got some components to it. It's a little bit like a heist.
A heist story. Yeah.
And so as opposed to just being using cowboy tropes to basically just tell a typical or stereotypical story. What we have here is we have a heist story set in Western times, which I think adds some additional layers to it and makes it more interesting.
And one of the things about the Western genre, especially the cowboy genre, in the 50s, for a lot of them, is people pulled information from real history and then would balderize it and make it, more exciting, more fun, and more kid friendly, and played into the mythical West, right? So, like, the Wild West was never as wild as we were led to believe. It was mostly people living out fairly peaceful lives, raising crops, getting dysentery, boring stuff, right? It was Yes, Tim Lim would hate Outlaws 11. So, so Twitless just had to leave too. So, but yeah, I think the idea of they played into the idea of the creation of the mythical U.S. Western that carried on the ideas of what the American experiment would mean in a frontier setting, and I think a lot of those sort of stories, using real life characters, actually were grist in the mill of the greater, even more fictionalized characters that would come out of 1950s TV, like Batlash, and if Batlash is comics, sorry, Maverick, and Gunsmoke. My brain is skipping out on me, guys.
That's
Yep.
So, what is going on with the thing here?
But now,
No, on my computer is trying to like pop up a different application in front of it, and I'm just like, no, stop that! I didn't tell you to do that. Come on.
We need to get you a new computer, one that isn't possessed.
There you go.
Or we need to perform an exorcism on your computer.
Nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. But yeah. So I think that's one of the. So this story was definitely kind of fit into that Gospel Bill. No, Taylor, not Gospel Bill. Gospel Bill's like an anti-Western.
Tweetsy Railroad. What?
I don't even know what he's talking about anymore.
So it's a Jeez. Okay.
Bonanza.
So Tweetsy Roads is a theme park for like little kids, and they have a mini railroad that you can kind of ride.
Where?
It's somewhere near in my vicinity. I forget exactly where. I think it might be North Carolina, or is it Tennessee?
Have
gun will travel. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. But yeah, some of those absolutely fictional cowboys and lawmen that became even bigger than life. And I don't think you could have had that without taking the real characters and mythologizing them in a lot of ways. So, which that factors into one of my big loves in story, or folklore and myth and legend, and how they all intertwine together.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I think that America has had, because we've been so short and we came into being during the birth of mass media, I think we've kind of been on a fast track to develop some of these archetypes from where they were.
Yeah, the Western and a lot of the pulp dime novel Westerns trace their history back to, Buffalo Bill's traveling circus after he kind of saw some things, saw how they impressed on people and what people in the East thought they were, and went ahead and found a way to make a business out of it.
So, side note on what people in the East thought they were. First of all, Cody Neo says, hey. But I got to share a personal story. So I live out in West Nebraska. I'm about 20 minutes from the Wyoming border, right? We're considered frontier out here, right? And so I went out to DC a number of years ago for a work conference. This has been probably 15 years ago, and so they had a meet and greet in the evening, and so I was, they had food and supposed to meet other professionals in my field. At this thing, and so I'm there kind of going around with my little plate of soft cheese and crackers, and so this dude in a suit walks up to me and he starts asking who I am and where I'm from, and I tell him, I'm from Nebraska, about as far west as you can get without it being Wyoming. And he says, "Oh, do you guys have problems with Indian uprisings?" And I said, "Yeah, we have to circle the wagons up every night just to stay alive." And the guy says,
Funny story about that. You ever heard of the Taos Revolt?
Wait, hang on. Let me finish. The guy says, "Really? No, not really. There hasn't been an Indian uprising in 100 years." I mean,
Wow.
there was a standoff in White Clay in the 70s, but that's not at all the same thing. The guy had no clue that like the Old West, like as like from the anything you can imagine from the movies, has been over for a really long time.
He's real slicker.
I tell you what. Anyway, Cody, you were saying?
Yeah. So my area, Taos, New Mexico. The Taos Revolt, the Pueblo Revolts, was the one successful attempt by natives to kick out the Spanish, the English, and everybody. They broke their chains and they broke out. The Taos Pueblo here exists. Nixon gave back their sacred mountain to them so that they were no longer prosecuted for hunting on it. But before that, they have the nicest reservation in the country, and it is still third world country. So the Old West still exists in some places. It just has touches of modern darkness to it now. So that's my difference there. But it's mythology in particular, and having these aspirational tales, this folklore has been key to America, because most of our again, our history is so short, like you were saying. So we had to latch on and make things bigger than they were. But a lot of cases, then we latched on to the mythos, and that became bigger. But as other things, as reality was neglected, but also became bigger in different ways. And
Well,
that's been something the Western genre has been able to explore again and again in more modern incarnations, such as the post-apocalyptic Wanderer film, any of these neo-westerns, and that's what I try and do myself, and I think that's kind of a testament to the power of the storytelling, and that's kind of why I'm here with you folks.
Well, yeah, and I think part of it too is one of the things about the mythic telling of our history, especially when you're looking at I think it's a Japanese story, but it borrows so much from American archetypes as Cowboy Bebop, right? And it's able to paint a post-racial picture of people, right? So they're able.
Are you
to,
talking about the newly acclaimed Netflix series? Right?
No, not the net. Not
come on,
not Flixbot.
Listen, Twitless. Nobody's going to be stupid enough to try to adapt.
Yeah,
Cowboy Bebop. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I
don't
know what I was
get
thinking.
into on the East Coast. It's crazy that anyone would think about that. But no, that just they. Okay, I gotta cut the joke. I'm about to go off on a rant. But,
what are you talking about? It was critically acclaimed. All the journalists said it was awesome.
Stop it.
Okay.
He's just trying to push your buttons at this point.
So I think what that demonstrates is that is it using these same types of ideas, they're able to create a framework that brings people together around that idea, the ideas of abandonment, of loneliness, of frontier, into something. And I think that Cowboy Bebop is a great example of that, but the spaghetti westerns are another one, right? Where Italians are reinterpreting American mythology through their lens, and still finding meaning in it. In fact, one of the things I wanted to bring out too, I didn't bring any examples with me because I'm an ill-prepared person, but Italian comics, fumettis, have a whole set of comics that are all westerns, right? Tex and Sabatini, and I'm going to forget the other names of them, but the westerns were huge in Italy in the 60s through the 80s. And I think they're still fairly I think there's some popularity there still today.
I want to say there's also, isn't there like a French tradition as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I hadn't gotten to that yet, but
Blueberry is
Lucky
a
Luke.
beautiful example by Mobius.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or Lucky Luke, which was in the That I can't remember the name of it. There's three different. It doesn't matter, but Lucky Luke is another example of a French comic that is anchored into that cowboy tradition, even if it takes a funny look at it. And Dave points out Trigun, which I've heard a lot of good things about, but I've never seen Trigun, so I can't really comment. So
Trigun, it runs on its characters to me. The paneling can be so damn confusing. That mangaka was very scatterbrained, but beautiful. Like the story's good, it's grounded, but it can be unclear.
So you're saying
that's been my main problem with it. I've gotten into its sequel because he only did the original run, printed through Dark Horse over here. That's 2 omnibus volumes, and then they started printing the continuation series Maximum, and it's all right. It's another thing that got popular that I don't think anybody expected, and then it thrives on its characters. Their characters are just wonderful, and you want to spend time with them, even if it's sometimes unclear to me.
Well, yeah. So are you saying watch the anime rather than read the manga?
I would watch the movie, and then if you like the movie, then you'll be able to watch the anime. The anime also has a little bit. It's not amazing. I wouldn't put it on the tier of Cowboy Bebop like we were just talking about. It's not as focused and clear.
It wouldn't be the first time that the anime actually is better than the manga upon which it's based. Like I remember trying to read Sailor Moon at one point. It's like impossible to read that manga.
Well, I as far as I'm concerned, it's impossible to watch. So that's Anyway, moving on.
You sexist.
Well, I'm not a girl. I'm also not a huge fan of sitting down to watch My Little Pony. It's not made for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, I did want to bring up this panel here because this is another question that I would love to have answered by looking at the original, because this may be an error that is it would be funny if it was in the original text, but the guy says, I'm pretty sure he's trying to say he's going to get the boys an early trial, which would actually fit what's going on in the story. But here it clearly says early trail. So...
Yeah, that's not a phrase I've ever heard. It's not colloquialism. My guess is it's just a little bit of dyslexia. A little bit A before I instead of the other way around.
And this makes me. This lends
it could
me
be
to
one of those things where it was like somebody just, if it was hand entered, it could be just somebody like typing and missing a key.
And that's what I think happened.
It could be in the original. It could have had an actual like a typographic error in the original and just got transferred.
And that is also possible, yeah.
Yeah. Or if it's a computer, they could just be misreading it. Who knows?
I think this speaks more to it being a transcription.
Yeah.
Because if they're recreating the fonts, I'm thinking they're doing a lot of the lettering, like themselves, or relettering it. So I'm wondering. I think that just might be a transcription error. There's actually another one. I'm going to pull it because I'm a jerk like that.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, and that's one of the things that, like, one of the things I want to point out about that too is like the lettering special effects have been redone, right?
Yeah.
And at some of the panels, I felt like it kind of took me out of them, but I really appreciate them not retouching the original art, right? Like that's one of the things that, like, if you get like some of those $1 reprint comics that Marvel and DC have been putting out, and it's cool because like you can get a hold of a hard to get, like I got the first issue of the Joker comic from the 70s, which is a fun little story, and I paid like $1 for it, so I like it, but for a while they were recoloring all of those old comics that they'd reprint, and some of the modern coloring just this doesn't look right. And I appreciate what the team that's working on this is trying to do, is they're trying to touch for clarity. They're not trying to change the style, so they're keeping even with filling in the background between the panels in that faded newsprint color. They're trying to preserve the texture of the original art while making sure that the lettering has a clarity that's going to whatever screen you're reading it on, whether it's on your phone, your tablet, your computer, you're gonna be able to get the word bits of the story in your head.
Right. Okay, so this was the other typo I found, which is they took Moreland and Desmond in to swing for a robbery we fold.
Which definitely should be a P.
Right, yeah. So
Oh, you never fool anything?
Yeah.
Fool things all day.
Probably,
Yeah,
No,
you ever
no.
fooled
that was
something?
probably a misprinting in the original.
It could be. Yeah, that is possible.
And that's one thing that we were talking about is if there's either a misprinting or like an artifact on the paper that they took the original from, that just like the ink didn't get there or whatever.
Yeah,
It could have
that's what I meant.
yeah.
But
Phil, you're just fooling my leg.
Full of something.
I'm pulling your egg.
Oh, okay.
Wait, what? That's a whole different story. We can't. Come on, this is a family show.
This is yeah.
It was
Gotta
a
keep
misprinting.
PG-13, guys.
It was a misprinting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was an artifact.
No swearing in my Christian server.
I was pulling his EG,
EG.
LEG.
Yeah.
He's fooling it.
Or EEG. Okay, moving on. That joke's dead. We gotta stop beating it. It's dead.
I don't think it was ever
Yeah,
alive,
it was
to be
never-
honest. I was gonna say.
So,
It was just
anyway,
bones.
that's one of the things that like I appreciate about the way they're doing that. And I mean, I've thank you, Neo. Thank you.
Speaking of which, did anyone see the trailer for the new Sonic movie?
Yeah,
I
Yeah, it
did.
was the best.
I really wish that Jim Carrey would have committed to the part and put on like 100 pounds, but whatever.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think I'm probably gonna put money down for that one, which is
It
saying
looks-
something
it-
because I hate Hollywood. I hate you all. But I'll probably watch them.
Me too. I was actually. I think it's
And
the first time I've ever been. It's the first time in as long as I can remember that I was actually psyched for a film. I was like, "This is what this feels like." Oh my gosh!
I remember this
Like, you're not
feeling.
supposed to have any expectations for Sonic, but then you watch the preview and you're like, oh man, this isn't like total garbage.
I know it's like I feel like I've taken a. I feel like I've gone back in time.
To a simpler time. Yeah, and that,
I'm so used to rolling my eyes at film trailers and film announcements and everything.
and especially for a video game movie.
yeah.
On a side note, that was a baller line. Like that was the toughest line I've seen in a trailer in like years.
When they first said,
like I need your power?
yeah, when they
Totally
first
off
said,
topic, but that was like, oh, my heart is cold. Oh.
well, it goes hard. When they first announced Idris, I was like, really? I didn't think he'd be a good pick, but he really nailed it. I was impressed.
So,
Do you
Anyway.
know the way?
Yeah.
I was. Who was it? Somebody shared a meme that they put together like they done up the. That
I
he
think
got
I
in
have it
Knuckles.
saved. believe
Yeah,
it or not.
and it's like, do you think I need your power? I only know the way. I only need the way.
I'll send it to you through DM so you can enjoy it later.
Yeah. It's great. Anyway,
So okay,
back to West.
it's applicable because Knuckles wore a cowboy hat in the OVA. So we're totally good. If you don't believe me,
Of course. Sure, why not? But no, the other thing I wanted to go ahead and where I remembered I had gotten off on a tangent talking about American myth. And I wanted to go ahead and bring it around too, because one of the things that Cowboy Comics had done from the Silver Age through the Bronze Age was develop their own like cast of cowboy characters to play in the mythical Old West area, and things like Jonah Hex, which is a big deal, or Batlash, or okay, Twitless. Sure, here we go. There we go. There he is. Okay.
see,
Cowboy
totally.
Knuckles.
Cowboy Knuckles.
So yeah, that's one thing I want to go spend a little bit of time talking about and kind of wrap the show up with that. Have you guys read any of those old Cowboy comics? What are your favorites?
Oh well, I started reading Jonah Hex way back when. Dollar Bin. I just love his design, right? That iconic scarred face. That's instantly impressionable. You put him in a cowboy hat and you have him on a cover doing whatever. A kiddo's gonna see that. A kid like me is gonna see that and take something from it, right? He usually is drawn as Clint Eastwood. Back then, I mean, they had no bones about it, and so you have that. I had a connection, of course, to the Dollar Trilogy and many of the other spaghettis that he did. My favorite being Two Mules for Sister Sarah, and just that instant connection, right? So anytime I'd see him in the Dollar Bin, because they like a lot of books got really popular and then got overprinted, and so they for a long time, and I don't know if it's true still, right? It's been about a decade since I went dollar diving in a comic shop. But when I did, man, I could walk away 15, 20 Jonah Hexes and just have a blast for about a week. I was a Punisher fan before that. Punisher was one of the characters that got me into it. So it was just this instant bridge between all these classic masculine power fantasies, revenge fantasies, and putting it in the old west, my background, and putting it in just with such character, making him a rebel, so he was always an outsider beyond just being an outsider, and still making him a gentleman, making him most of the time a decent fellow like they do with Frank Castle. Just that's always intrigued me, how you can make a very bad man acceptable, particularly in such in this fantasy form, this Western fantasy. And man, I'm a huge fan of Jonah Hex, and I recommend, if you like the horror spin, check out the Vertigo run of Jonah Hex. That extra horror bit to it was just excellent.
Yeah, and I also really loved the idea that Hex was a Southerner, but he wasn't. It wasn't for, it was because that was where he was from. It wasn't any sort of like political thing, and so that when the South lost, he was just disenfranchised. So he roams around the American West, which at that point was like Missouri all the way to the ocean, and that was, but because he, the country he had known, well, that was over. They lost. There was just nothing left for him back home. And I always thought that kind of that man with no country, so he had nothing left but to try to piece together some sort of life, and so he was almost like a living ghost.
Well, they named him Jonah, the forsaken off of the Bible. Then he was sold to, I believe, the Apache from his dad, so his dad could get through Apache territory, and then that's where he got his trouble. The Apache took him in, and he fell in love, with the wrong person and got his face scarred. They really took a lot of time, even more so than Frank Castle, right? Frank just loses his family and then removes himself from society. Society is doing its best to always kick him out. And he keeps wearing the gray color because he found camaraderie in the military, like many do. But then that was taken from him. So he keeps wearing that, or at least did keep wearing it for that sense, right? And to also be kind of like the outlaw Josie Wales, where it's just like, do something about it. And it was again, that's one of my favorite characters, probably my favorite DC character is Jonah Hex.
It's also worth noting too that this was fairly common for a lot of poor folks on both sides of any war throughout the past, where you get a suit of military clothes, they would keep them because they were decent quality clothes. So you're not going to throw away a coat just because you're not in the service anymore. You keep warm. so it's totally realistic to have people keep wearing those service duds in the stories, and I thought I had a lot of really great texture to it. Neo, to answer your question, did Jonah Hex ever meet the Vigilante? No, because Vigilante was set in the 40s. And Jonah Hex was set during the postbellum during the postbellum period. So
he was taxidermied by then.
So he was so they didn't. Although the fun thing about the Vigilante story is that he lives in a place where the West still happens and then goes to the cities. Like my own family was homesteading Wyoming during the time the Vigilante was supposed to be taking place. So, there's, I'm telling you, there were people still, doing all the Old West things at the same time. So I always loved those stories. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I also huge fan of Jonah Hex. I think that the stories are just great. Now, I haven't read, there was a sci-fi series in the late 80s, early 90s just called Hex, and it's supposed to be Jonah reincarnated or something. Never read them.
It's
Don't look
Jonah.
very good.
It's Jonah. This guy. He's a collector, right? And he puts on exhibitions of war and different time periods. He rips people out of their time and then puts them in this arena so other people can watch them. And then Jonah just breaks out. And then it's Mad Max with Jonah Hex in the future for DC wanting to do what Marvel was kind of leaning towards, with heading towards the idea of 2099, these future superhero reboots. That was DC's kind of dipping a toe. They had a Batman crossover from a Batman in that future. It was a huge inspiration to my work. It's all right.
I think I've seen the books, but I've never. I didn't even put together that it was Jonah Hex.
I have some that I got like a garage sale stuff, but I've never read any of them. They're still in my file cabinets in my 2-read drawers. But it's actually, I gotta say, Cody, it's great. You're like, yeah, it was a huge inspiration to my work. Okay.
It's all right.
Well, I go to, you can have amazing ideas and your execution can fall flat.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Older comics for me, a lot of them fall flat because the writer wasn't so confident in the artist, right? So there's just so much more there than needs to be that makes either the art less justified or the writing less justified, right? There's this disconnect with a lot of old comics where the collaboration wasn't as tight as sometimes you get with writer artists, or you get with long running writer artist teams. And so that's something I have difficulty, and that Hex suffers from that.
Well, sometimes that's even editorial, where you don't have an editor that can navigate the relationship between them. There are I can't think of any historical cases right now, but I know there have been cases of people where artists and writers are antagonistic, but because they're both talking to the editor is like, no, and so you end up with a really good product just because you have an editor who knows their stuff.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I can't think of any. I've heard stories. I can't think of any right now. So you have to believe me. Just trust me.
Oh, I'm sure it's true.
Source, believe me. I totally know.
Source, trust me, bro.
Yeah.
I'll kick you off the stream like that. Okay, Phil. What about you? Do you have any favorite Western comics?
Last year, I don't know if you guys know Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
Oh yeah.
They did a book called Pulp. Now it's set, I think, in the 1920s or 30s, but it's about an old man that writes old Western pulps, who's using stories of when he used to rob banks and stuff back in the day.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
And there's more to it than that, but I'm going to leave it right there.
Okay. So pay attention there. Go out and buy Pulp by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
It was amazing. It's like,
oh, that sounds
probably
awesome.
The best comic I read in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I will also point out one more thing on. Well, we'll get onto that in a second. So John Monofox, have you spent much time reading Western comics?
So this, I hate to admit it, but I have never read a Western comic until this one that we just started reviewing. My familiarity with Westerns mostly comes from old films, really, more than anything. A lot of the old films from the 1950s and things like that, and then some animated things like for some reason Fievel Goes West comes to mind really more than anything.
Fievel Goes West has some solid Western tropes in it.
That was like my childhood movie.
It's a fun one.
Yeah,
I love it. It's not as great as the first film, but it's still fun.
Believe it or not, it holds up better if you've watched a lot of Westerns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's one of those things where like as I watched it when I was little, and then I grew up on John Wayne movies, and then when I was grown, I went back and watched a bunch of Clint Eastwood flicks and other spaghetti westerns. And so you sit down and you're like, you go back and you remember, and like, wait, they were doing a callback. That's Fistful of Dollars right there. That's what.
Yeah, it really is pretty fun. It really is pretty fun to see like all the little references that they do. One of the things that I always laugh at is that in the training scene in that film, the music that they use the music they use for that scene is a callback to one of Aaron Copland's pieces, and Copland's music has been very influential in the whole Western genre as far as like the films are concerned. So it really is kind of fun to see those little references.
Cool. Twitless.
So my Western experience is also related to the smattering I have is largely film. Like both versions of True Grit, for example, are strong favorites of mine. But I will say it's interesting because I was thinking about, is there any Western kind or Western themed comics I've been reading? And there actually is one that I've followed for a bit, but it's a manga. So I got this shared here. This is The Lies of Sheriff Evans. And it's called, like, I think the subtitle is Dead or Love or something. And the point of it, it's a rom-com. And it's pretty good and it's pretty funny. Artwork's a bit straight forward. It's not extremely great, but some of the themes or some of the recurring jokes are really funny. So if you're looking for a Western themed rom-com manga, if that's something that sounds appealing to you, check out Sheriff Evans. What's one funny bit is that Sheriff Evans is this like ladies' man. But he's never actually had a relationship before, and he's always using his father's advice. And so there's always these these flashbacks to his father saying "son," and they're all really funny. So
is his father a moron or what? I mean, how did
no,
land a lady?
It's mostly just bad luck. And obviously, like, he's trying to get girlfriends, but really who he should end up with is the lady on the cover, and the two of them are just kind of dancing around what eventually will probably be.
I understand that's a common trope in romance manga, but I don't read that stuff, so I wouldn't know.
But no, this is actually quite funny. Dave's got a great line, like the great line from of course the thing about True Grit is that there's so many good lines. That whole movie is great. I haven't seen the remake. It's actually extremely good, and it's closer to the book.
Oh, hey, Forrester's
I
back.
believe.
Hey,
yeah,
Forrester,
sorry, my phone died.
waiting, man?
My phone died. That was the problem.
Which is fine. I'm not trying to guilt you, but have you been waiting long?
No, I don't think so.
Good. Because I just now saw it, so I was like, if that's been there for a while, I'm going to feel real bad. So we're getting ready to wrap up. We're going around having everybody talk about their favorite Western comics.
Jonah Hex, obviously, old or modern, and I also like a French series called Blueberry.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things about Blueberry.
Yeah, it's drawn by Mobius.
Yeah. Anything he touches is usually pure gold.
It's okay.
Pure gold.
That's so cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I mentioned this earlier. I had my prop. It's Robin Annual that Chuck Dixon wrote. It is a modern Western that Robin takes part in, and it's got modern incarnations of Nighthawk and Powwow Smith, the Indian detective, who's a Detective Comics backup character in the 60s. And apparently you can't say that now. I know several dozen Lakotas that would argue with that, but whatever. Anyway, but it's a great. This is if you could find this in a dollar bin or whatever. This is so much fun. But in relationship to the chat, people talking about Neostar was asking about Vigilante, the Golden Age character, which Didn't appear a lot other than in a few backup stories after its original Golden Age run, and then in like All-Star Squadron, it was in there some. But in the late 90s, James Robinson did a Vigilante miniseries that is like a gritty, like film noir style murder mystery called Big City Lights, and it is well worth. And it's like a real, because the whole point about Vigilante was he was a country boy who became a music star, and he gets into the touring, and all of a sudden he sees all this injustice everywhere. And his dad was the old sheriff. He'd been like and so he had this idea. He'd been a sheriff in his little town, and so the Vigilante gets out there, and he's just like can't handle people being taken advantage of and being robbed, whatever. So he develops a costumed hero identity, and wherever he tours, he's busting up crime rings. And the Bright City Lights. I think it's all. That may have been the working title, maybe Prairie Justice. I can't remember, but it's James Robinson, and it's really good. It's really fun. It's a very marriage of style stories. It's a little bit of Western, a little bit of detective story, which is kind of what the Vigilante deserves. So, but yeah, that's gonna be my recommendation on that, guys. This has been unexpected, but fun. So if you guys in the chat, if you enjoyed this, and people that leave comments who catch the replay out, if you want to see more genre reviews, I personally would love to do another one where we're talking about this whole kind of stuff. I thought it was neat. What do you guys on the panel think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Technical difficulties aside. And I
That
wish
kept things fresh and interesting. You never knew who was going to be on the panel.
And I really feel stupid. I feel like if we had one more spot and could have got Doug. Oh my gosh, I don't remember his last name. Garrett. Doug Garrett would have been a really good addition to the panel.
Yes.
Well, we could do Westerns again. We'd have to just do it one time.
Well, I mean, just that dude knows his cowboy stuff, man.
There we go.
Yeah. So, okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and cut it. We're going to call it a show at an hour and a half. I want to thank you guys so much for coming on. Next week, we are doing your favorite Christmas story, and we'll have a different panel of people. I think Taylor's going to be there. I think Doug Curtis of Flying Ferret and Movie Men is going to be coming on, and other people that I don't remember. Mike Hutchison and RJ Carter from Critical Blast, and another person. I can't remember.
Well, I'll
But
apologize. I apologize in advance,
Christmas
whoever
story.
you are.
That's our topic, is your favorite Christmas story. And then the week after that, I think we're talking to CCC, but I can't remember the whole thing of me. So, and if you don't know what any of that means, DM me. I'm calling the show. It's good. Yeah. Before we go, though, does anybody have something they want to sell other than like your organs? We don't do that here.
That got gruesome.
I don't exactly have organs.
I usually have something. I'm happy to step in on.
Hit us with it.
Go for it.
I'm Cody with Ironverse Comics. Check out ironversecomics.com for all our merch, free reads to dive into our Galactic Armageddon. And I just hope you'll connect with us if you haven't already. And I was just very happy to be here and chat with you folks as long as I could about what is probably my personally most close to my heart genre in fiction. Just so much there from survival, from family, just so many different tropes that the Westerns hit that I hope to be hitting in my own work, and hope you folks will check it out. Ironverse Comics and Jack Iron Steel Cowboy. Check it on out.
If you've got if you can pull up a like a store page or something, we can share it on screen.
Oh, happy to. Let me see. How do I do? I think I do share.
Yeah. And then
Oh,
you
I
just
gotta
wanna-
pull it into a different window, don't I? Let me do that real quick.
You can share tabs as well. It'll let you share like a. Okay.
Share screen. Don't show these tips again. Share screen. Select window or screen. That one right there, and allow.
Then
Sadly,
Look at
it
that.
is loading on up, but you check
Whoa.
this out. We got a pre-launch
It's
for issue 4
animated.
going up. Get our comics there. Check out merch. You can start reading it down here. Issue 1 of that. Issue 1 of that. Give us
Now-
a shot.
Do you do the? Are you the writer, artist? What's your?
Writer, artist, writer, marketer. All the hats that put me where I am right now.
Gotcha.
But art, Maxi Dallo, wonderful talent. If folks have seen Kids and Monsters, that's his latest work, line work from Adam Lawson and Gifted Rebels. Been at this for a good chunk of time, and I'm hoping to keep at it for a good chunk of time. I enjoy this work and have many stories to tell, but I need folks to check it out. And that's why we got free reads, and we got issue 1 and 2 available straight from my publisher if you folks want to get physical.
You got some awesome character designs. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Phil, you don't have anything to sell, but you have a YouTube channel where you sometimes talk about comic lore. Yeah?
Kinda.
Way to sell it, Phil.
Snapped in half.
I was like, did my computer freeze up again? Or what was
Oh, jeez.
I've just been kind of uploading
10
memes.
cent story. You can check it out on YouTube. Well, yeah, but I mean, like you had that. It was basically a meme about Alan Moore, but I still thought it was a really good conversation starter. So
He's
little snippet from an interview.
fooling with you.
Oh, he's fooling me.
Oh, and I
Fooling
uploaded
my
a new
life.
one today. It was about Alan Moore's view on comic artists. So
Ooh,
go
I
check
didn't
that
see
one
that.
out.
I'll have to
No,
check
I did
that
not.
out.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, Forrester, you've been working with the Mythoverse people for a hot minute.
Yeah. Don't really have
Yeah,
anything
what
to
else?
pitch right now, though. But
Yeah. They have the Hallowed Harvests on their store.
right, that's there. Yeah.
So there you go. That's it. And you have any other projects you're working on too?
Nothing really to pitch right now.
Okay. Well, keep in mind, it's Dogs and Sailors on Twitter, right? So people
Yeah.
can find you there. Okay. And Mono Fox, what you guys have been working on stuff in the background. I see you pitching or sharing music clips. What have you been keeping busy with?
Oh, I'm busy with everything. Yeah, every now and again, I put music stuff that I do on Twitter. So that's been stuff that I've been keeping busy with. I've been working on mine and Vanessa's comic a lot lately. I've done a lot of rewriting and stuff like that, and I've been trying to learn how to draw in her style too, so that I can be able to pick up some of the art probably and hopefully get things pushed forward a little further. And then just mostly drawing horror art really at this point.
Cool.
And posting memes.
Well, and of course you designed this little fake face for yourself, so that's fun.
Yeah. I've got my my little VTuber avatar, which is like I've got like several different versions of it. This is the goth version because a friend of mine sent me down that rabbit hole. So, but yeah.
Oh yeah, you should have just got him a cowboy hat.
Yeah, I might do a cowboy hat or something like that at some point. Maybe a fedora hat, or I don't know. You know,
Twitless, of course. You're just anxious now to share about that you're on Amazon like a real writer.
I'm almost real. But yeah, check us out on Amazon. Adventures of Omega Girl issue number 1 and issue 2 should be coming out very shortly, and issue 3 hopefully even shortly or after that. Classic superhero action, and I cram a whole bunch of action and storytelling into 24 pages, 4 stories in the first book. So if you're definitely looking for a bang for your buck, check it out. You can get it on Kindle, or you can check it out on Indie Planet and get a print copy. Obviously, also check out the superschool.com, where I do superhero parody, superhero high school parody with Cartoonicus, who will be with us next week.
Yes. And superschool.com. It's a lot of good fun. I'm telling you guys. You guys should check it out. So, I also write and stuff, but I'm not going to care about that today because, I guess I wrote this Saint Nick comic that some people like, that I think you can get on Nick Mueller's Gumroad. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It's a quick hit. So we might be doing more of them. Got to figure it out. So, But yeah, other than that, my webcomics out there. It has nothing to do with cowboys, and that's a show. Come next week for your favorite Christmas story. Have a good night and keep reading comics, everybody.
Yeehaw!
Happy trails.
Happy trails to you.